It's the end of the year, and this video sponsors NVIDIA and GIGABYTE AEROS are giving us a shot at a white Christmas. They're giving away this custom-built PC featuring a beyond fast GIGABYTE GeForce RTX 4070 GPU. To be in the running, stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Hello and welcome to my Game Thing of the Year list for 2023. I call it the Game Thing of the Year list because, like last year, in a given year, a lot of the best gaming things that I consume aren't actually video games. They're technology, they're movies and TV shows, they're books or podcasts or whatever. For that reason, I like to cast a slightly wider net than most other Game of the Year roundups. However, I will say that this year was a little more restrained than last when it came to that auxiliary media. There was no sick podcast companion to a big video game release like last year's Helix Station, a companion piece to Callisto Protocol. Physical publications like Edge Magazine, Lock On, and A Profound Waste of Time continue to chug along, but there haven't been any new entrants. The Mario movie and The Last of Us TV show were both fantastic, but also very one-to-one with the source material that inspired them. And most disappointing of all, Hideo Kojima published the last episode of his weird podcast back in March of 2023, and there is no sign of any new episodes coming anytime soon. Why are we still here, Kojima? Just to suffer? I digress. So, 2023 didn't serve up a lot of that other stuff. By way of compensation, it did deliver us a hell of a lot of awesome video games and some really cool hardware to boot. So that's what this list is focused on this year, and with that, here's the best stuff I got my hands on in 2023. And speaking of hands-on, in November, out of absolutely nowhere, Valve was like, guys, you know that Steam Deck we have? We just made it way better, but also cheaper. Don't tell anyone. That last part was a joke, but also kind of true, because I've never seen a company undersell a product release as much as Valve undersold the Steam Deck OLED. This thing has over 33 improvements over and above the base LCD model, but Valve was only talking about like 2 of them, the OLED screen and improved battery life. You had to like decipher the Enigma code to find the part of the website where all the other improvements were being listed. Stuff like improved haptics, better memory, better sticks, better shoulder buttons, a better case, and literally 20 more other things. And the most insane thing of all, Valve put this out to market cheaper than its predecessor, as it now came with twice the amount of storage space for the same price. What other company on the planet would do that? So the Steam Deck OLED makes this list for 2 reasons. Number 1, the underselling and over-delivering here is like nothing else I've ever seen from a corporation, but more important than that, the Steam Deck OLED is the pinnacle of a category that is only picking up speed, handheld PC gaming. The AO Neo machines, the ROG Ally, the Legion Go, they're all hitting the market to different levels of success, but they are hitting the market, creating an entirely new way for people to enter the world of PC gaming, which can often be daunting, but when you push past that barrier to entry, you realize that there's just so much there to discover and enjoy. For me personally, the OLED made my favorite ever handheld console even better, and the fact that Valve put it out to market in the way that they did is almost unbelievable. If you haven't picked one up yet, then I really cannot recommend it more highly. It's incredible. The Yakuza franchise is one of my white whales. I look at it from afar being like, one day I will experience that. But it's hard, because to do so properly means starting at the beginning, Yakuza 0, and then going right through the series for what, like 400 hours of gameplay? I wish to God I had the time to do that, but sadly, I simply do not. I tried Lost Judgment, and that did not go well, as the like ratio and comment section on that video will attest. When I didn't like that game, people were like, you just don't like RGG games, bro. And I'm like, no, that can't be right. The characters, the storytelling, the melodrama, the approach to open world structure and exploration, the playfulness and invention brought to bear in each new iteration, surely RGG games were for me, right? Well, Like a Dragon Ishin was the moment when I finally got to click with an RGG game in just the way I always knew I would. It's a standalone story, so I was free to enter it without having to play anything prior, and the clever reuse of characters and voice actors, but superimposed on a feudal Japanese setting and cast, allowed me to experience many of the unforgettable personalities that define the broader series. I really love the characterization and storytelling on display here. It's centered on this paramilitary organization that Kiryu, aka aka Ryoma, joins in his quest for vengeance, you carefully pick your way through this body, separating friend from foe, until you eventually get swept up in a broader battle for the very soul of Japan, in a moment when the nation considers its isolationist policy and its sovereignty, the threat of economic colonization from foreign powers, all set against the backdrop of the end of the shogunate and a revolution of the people. It is a fascinating moment in Japanese history, brought to life with all the colour and melodrama that RGG games are known for, and not for nothing, but it's also just a really great video game. It was originally released back in 2014, before many of the Western open-world RPG design approaches were set in stone, and as such, it has its own very unique and far more interesting approach to things like discovery, itemization, and progression. You can go the entire game without discovering near vital weapon techniques or upgrades, because the game doesn't hold your hand and lead you to them, and that is awesome. I really love this, and while I know I'll probably never get the time to go all in on the Yakuza franchise, I'm just glad that I got to experience this weird little slice of it. The shooter genre has grown a little stale over these past few years. Sure, there have been plenty of releases, but outside of battle royales and extraction shooters, we haven't seen a lot of innovation in the shooter space. Franchises like Halo, Battlefield, and Siege have kind of stalled, continuing to service their existing player bases without really offering anything new. Well, speaking of Battlefield, a bunch of former DICE devs left the studio and formed Embark. Clearly, they were restless with the state of the genre too, because their first game, The Finals, is very much the shot in the arm that shooter fans have been waiting for. The Finals draws heavy inspiration from the visual stylings of Mirror's Edge, another DICE game. Here the levels are bright, spacious, urban, a subtle futurism coursing through them that gives them a brilliant sheen while still feeling real and grounded. The level design is a standout, with gameplay focused on verticality and parkour, with various pathways through the levels that promote momentum and pace, and if you do find yourself stuck somewhere, you can just blow a hole through the wall, because the standout feature of The Finals is its utterly incomparable approach to level destruction. This is new technology developed by Embark, tracking destruction on the server side, meaning that it reduces visual and geometry inconsistencies for players as they're watching this destruction unfold. That allowed Embark to be way more ambitious with this destruction model than any other game has been able to pull off. You can collapse entire buildings here, and not just for funsies either, since the destruction is deeply baked into the strategic side of the core gameplay loop. It's disappointing to see Embark employ AI-assisted text-to-speech here, since it adds nothing to the game, and it only lays down a precedent that's sure to be more broadly adopted in the future, reducing the pay and recognition that voice talent would otherwise receive. That's a complex topic that I spoke about at length in my review, so I won't reiterate it here, but I will say that I hope Embark remove this stuff, because The Finals has a lot going for it, and there's no reason the narrative around it should be dragged down by something so easily remedied. Regardless, this is a fantastic video game, and not since Apex Legends have I been so excited to see a new shooter emerge on the scene. It's free to play, it's on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Grab some mates if you can and take a punt on it. The first time you charge through a load-bearing pillar as a heavy and bring down a building behind you, I guarantee you, you will be hooked. Alright, I know what you're thinking. What the hell is Diablo 4 doing on this list? I don't know. I guess Austin put it there. Right, Austin?
No?
Damn, alright, it was me. I guess I better explain myself. Let me begin by saying that I do not believe Diablo 4 is perfect. In fact, in my review of it, I highlighted its fairly restrictive talent trees, its unwieldy library of secondary stats, and its scaling open world, which makes sense at the endgame, but absolutely robs you of any feeling of progression during the campaign. At endgame, things got even worse, as itemization was not doing enough heavy lifting to allow for more interesting build diversity, and the endgame grind was far too leveraged into nightmare dungeons that quickly became repetitive. So all of that was true, and some of it remains true to this day, even despite an impressive Season 2 that's done some great work on the endgame grind and itemization front. But here's the thing, I said back then that Diablo 4 was one of the most successful live service looter launches of all time, and I stand by that. You get a campaign that's like 50 hours long depending on how you approach it, the storytelling was legitimately compelling, Sanctuary had never been darker or more brooding or more massive, the open world was full of public events, side quests, towns, dungeons, and the excellent stronghold encounters which were a real highlight. I've now leveled 3 characters into the endgame, a necro, a druid, and a rogue, and that means that there's 2 classes I haven't even touched, but more importantly, there are like 4 or 5 different builds within each class that I've not yet explored, board. This season I made a penetrating shot rogue, next season I could play a rogue again, except focused on melee attacks, and the season after that there are still like 3 other builds that I could choose to run, giving me a whole new way to play this class. I've now put about 150 hours into Diablo 4 across launch and the 2 seasons, and there's still so much more for me to discover within each class, and more things are added to the game each season, including new activities, new seasonal mechanics that can completely upend your build, as well as new legendaries that can do the same. Diablo 4 copped a lot of shit at launch, and sure, a lot of it was deserved, absolutely. But the way I saw it was like, think about how much Blizzard packed in on day 1. Compare that to what was shipped on day 1 with Diablo 3, or even 2 or 1. Compare that to the state of the overwhelming majority of live service looters when they hit the market on day 1. If Diablo 4's day 1 offering was not enough to earn Blizzard at least some recognition, then I really think there's something off about the way we evaluate these sorts of games. Personally, and I know it's an unpopular take, but I really do congratulate the Diablo team for what they did here. This game has a long way to go before it's going to make the hardcore fans really happy, but for me as a casual enjoyer, I'm a little bit in awe of how much Blizzard were able to deliver on day 1, and I'm really bullish on where Diablo 4 is going to end up over the coming months and years, because this was one hell of a starting point.
What have you got, Isaac?
Yeah, the Ishimura's in the red. And fix the centrifuge. Get the fuel running.
2023 was a competitive year for video games, many genres delivering some absolute best-in-class offerings. However, no genre in 2023 was as stacked as survival horror, which managed to deliver not 1, not 2, but 3 absolutely extraordinary video games. The first was this, the Dead Space remake, the first big release of 2023, and a game so excellent that it really set the tone for what the rest of the year had in store for us. Dead Space is, to this day, legendary. Even though we haven't had a new entry since the lamentable Dead Space 3 back in 2013, many people still hold a candle for it as their favourite survival horror game, a genre not lacking in iconic franchises. Dead Space stood apart from the others for its brilliant, terrifying rendition of the USG Ishimura, a planet destroyer turned haunted house in space. There, a suite of horrific enemies awaited their delimbing at the hands of you, Isaac Clarke, who, like Gordon Freeman before him, was a STEM nerd in the wrong place at the wrong time. The foundations of Dead Space were timeless, and so EA Motive were very smart to leave them wholly intact, but on top of that, they made some smart interventions into level design, weapon functionality, encounter design, and quality of life. The result is an experience that is the definitive way to enjoy Dead Space in 2023, and a stark reminder of just how good a job Visceral did with it back in the day. It would be nice to imagine that we'll get a Dead Space 2 remake and potentially a Dead Space 3 that, fixes it. But that is sadly very unlikely. Word on the street is that the remake didn't sell a boatload, and with EA Motive working on other projects, this does seem like a one and done affair. A real shame, because even after EA's best efforts to delimb the franchise back in 2023, it's still got legs. Here's hoping EA chooses to keep stretching them. Okay, I firmly believe that most people are not aware of just how fucking crazy the MetaQuest 3 headset actually is. So yes, it is a VR headset. It plays all the VR games you'd expect it to, and it does so untethered from your PC. All the processing happens in the headset itself. That's not new, of course, but when you start to see the visual fidelity that's now being delivered here, it's a little bit shocking to see how much this is capable of. In addition to that, the screen door effect that really dominated the most recent crop of mainstream VR headsets, that's gone now. This not only makes looking at games really good, but it also tears down the barrier to media consumption, because watching TV or movies on previous headsets kinda sucked owing to how grainy it looked. That's gone now. It's a truly clear image. It's not 4K clear, but it's like 720p to 1080p clear, more than watchable, for sure. But what really makes the MetaQuest 3 headset nuts is its mixed reality capabilities. the pass-through cameras installed on this thing are now good enough that you can wear it and move around your environment with confidence. You don't need to take the headset off to see what's going on in the real world. A quick double tap of the side and you're immediately seeing your surroundings. You also don't need to use controllers, since the cameras can see your hands, and you can use various hand gestures to control applications and even type on imaginary floating keyboards. This comparison video shows how far this has come. This is called Piano Vision, and it's a mixed reality app that's like Guitar Hero meets piano meets real life. This is a person sitting at a real piano, and the headset tells them which key they need to press and when. This is what this looked like on MetaQuest 2. It's basically unusable. Here's what it looks like on MetaQuest 3. This is a guy doing his dishes while wearing his headset, because you're able to bring up and place browser windows anywhere you like in your environment. I've actually done this myself and it is awesome, trust me on that. Chores will never be the same. Valve has just released a native Steam Link app for the MetaQuest 3 headset, which gives you unbridled wireless access to the VR library on your PC, and because the Quest 3 headset supports Wi-Fi 6E, the connection is unbelievable. I'm currently playing through Half-Life Alyx this way, and it feels indistinguishable from having the headset plugged into my PC. Here's something that's really wild. Xbox just released a native xCloud app for the MetaQuest 3 headset. So you know how the PlayStation Portal lets you keep playing games after you've been kicked off your TV, only it's on a little 8-inch screen or whatever? Well, with MetaQuest 3, if you get kicked off your Xbox, you can just put this headset on and you can use an Xbox controller and you can play on a screen as big as you damn well please. When Apple announced their ridiculously overpriced Vision Pro mixed reality headset, I was like, that's dumb. But having now experienced a slice of this for myself, I'm like, that isn't dumb, that is the future. Wearable computers are sure to transform how we live and work and play games, and maybe a bunch of people already knew that, but I didn't know that, and the MetaQuest 3 was the device that opened my eyes to all of it. There is no way this isn't the start of something very, very big. Alrighty, so that's the warm-up stuff. I'm about to get to my best stuff of the year, but before I do that, Austin, you review games on this channel too. Is there anything you'd like to shout out?
As a matter of fact, there is. So there were 2 games I strongly recommended this year. The first one was Remnant 2. Honestly, one of the best co-op experiences I have ever had. It's a game that truly rewards your curiosity at every turn, packed to the brim with clever puzzles and secrets that really test your problem-solving skills. There are loads of hidden character interactions, many I discovered long after hitting the credits, all providing you with meaningful unlocks and loot that services an extensive buildcraft system. It had this really novel procedurally generated campaign thing that meant that joining other players' campaigns would always result in more discoveries. All the decisions that you make have like a tangible impact on the stories of these realms, the locations you discover, and the bosses you confront. And these bosses were such a joy to fight, in large part due to their banging music and their bespoke arenas, which you need to take full advantage of to deal with mechanics. Tying it all together is the gorgeous environment art and lighting. This was one of the first games to release on Unreal Engine 5, and what a showcase it was, with every zone exhibiting such identity and visual splendor. It may not be the best looking game of this year, but at the time I was very impressed, and I mean, yeah, it still does look fantastic. There really isn't anything else quite like Remnant 2, and it's even on Game Pass now. There's also still a healthy population to play with if you can't rope in some buddies, so you've got no excuse. Give this game a shot. My favorite game I reviewed this year, though, is Lies of P. What an utterly remarkable release this was. I mean, a basically unknown studio who had never developed anything like this in the past somehow managed to deliver one of the best Souls-likes ever conceived, going toe-to-toe with even the very pioneers of the genre. It was a brutally difficult game. I distinctly remember spending like 8 hours straight on a single boss, which is literally the entire length of some video games, but man, was the pain worth the gain, as the sense of euphoria I felt after downing every one of these bosses is one I will never forget. Combat, in my opinion, was A+. Yes, there were some hang-ups when it came to parry timing and dodging, which the studio has since addressed, but overall, top class combat. It demands you use all of your tools and master these encounters, and it's propped up by excellent animation and sound design as well, nailing that game feel and polish that only the very best Souls-likes offer. But it did bring some fresh additions to the formula, namely its weapon crafting system that allowed you to mix and match various handles and blades to tailor your movesets and special abilities. This allowed for loads of experimentation and made every new weapon discovery feel exciting. It had this neat mechanic with your healing item that allowed you to regain the final charge by landing or parrying blows, resulting in frequent, epic, final stand moments where you just managed to scrape by, provided you maintained your composure. There was also a weapon sharpening system that gave an extra element to be mindful of in combat as you search for openings to do so, and you also just looked like a badass doing it. Perhaps one of its greatest strengths though is the story. I found its gritty twist on the tale of Pinocchio quite captivating, delivered in a way that's much easier to track and digest than is typical for Souls-likes. It's a touching tale about what it means to be human, told through an eclectic cast of characters that I became deeply attached to by the end. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Lies of P. Its combat, its story, its art, its music, the way it perfectly balances the bleak and the beautiful. Just an expertly crafted title that left a lasting impression on me, and its ending has me very excited for what this studio might do next. If you know, you know. So those were the standout games I reviewed this year. Now it's Chillup's turn to talk about his favorite stuff. Before I go though, I'd just like to personally thank you all for being so welcoming of my reviews here. It's been an awesome experience, the support really means a lot, and I look forward to doing more reviews for you all in the new year. Anyway, I'll catch you guys then. Back to you, Chillup.
Alright, sorry to disappoint you everyone, but just like the end of July, I am back, and you'll have to put up with me for the rest of the video. So what say we lift your spirits with something a little colourful? Secrets are hard to keep in this business. Whether it's hacks or leaks or poorly redacted documents, secrets always manage to wriggle their way out, so it's always a nice surprise to get an honest-to-goodness surprise, especially one that is playable the very same moment we hear about it. That was how Microsoft and Bethesda introduced us to Hi-Fi Rush, a game made by TangoWorks, who had earlier been making both Ghostwire Tokyo and the Evil Within series. This, therefore, was a slight shift in both genre and tone, but it's a testament to the range and talent of that studio that it felt like TangoWorks had been making this sort of game for decades. Hi-Fi Rush looked at the emerging rhythm action game genre, think Crypt of the Necrodancer, BPM, and Hellsinger, and it applied that same principle to a third-person melee action game. Drizzle on a healthy serve of razzle-dazzle and you got yourself something that's one part Devil May Cry, one part Guitar Hero, and a whole lot of Saturday morning cartoon energy. The visual presentation here was just next level, absolutely absurdly good, with every fully animated cutscene bringing characters and events to life, and every frame of the action looking so bright and crisp that it felt like the characters were about to leap out of your television screen or monitor. And the music, my god, banger after banger, each of them so satisfying in the way they both complemented the moment-to-moment action and the way they would build throughout the level. Combat wasn't super deep, but it was by no means one-dimensional. It struck a great balance of depth and approachability, giving you a nice floor to guarantee your success, but also a nice ceiling to reach for if mastery was your jam. This just had so much energy, like it felt electric, like you could feel the excitement of the people who made it, and every bit of that excitement translated straight through to us from the first moment it was revealed to the moment that we ourselves rolled credits on it. Hi-Fi Rush was the rarest and best kind of surprise, and I really hope that TangoWorks are working on a sequel, because one would absolutely not be enough. In October, just when we thought the year was over and when Nintendo already had 2 of the 3 highest rated games of the year under their belt, Tears of the Kingdom and the Metroid Prime Remaster, an elephant-shaped Mario waddles into view and says, "I got one more in me." Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Holy shit, what a video game. I mean, goddamn, this right here is very, very special. and it absolutely hit me like a truck because I'm not a 2D Mario man. I mean, I've played them. In fact, my very first video game ever was Super Mario Bros. On the NES back when I was 4 years old. Since then, I've played almost all or most of the 2D Marios and enjoyed them, but they've never had the effect on me that they've had on so many other people. I was always drawn more to action games and RPGs, until of course the 3D Mario games arrived and I was all in, as were we all. As such, Super Mario Bros. Wonder was so far down my watch list that it barely registered. I really thought it was just going to be another great game that I personally did not love, but boy oh boy was I wrong. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is one of the most relentlessly creative video games I have ever played. The speed at which it's able to spin up and discard new ideas is dizzying. The amount of personality that is present in each level, each Goomba, each flower, it is impossible to not be charmed by it all. The attention to detail that has gone into everything, from the visuals to the music to the character designs to the animations, the craftsmanship and artistry of this is well beyond even the high standards that Nintendo have always managed to deliver. We haven't even spoken about the gameplay yet, the various power-ups you can get and how much they change your approach to platforming, exploration and combat, the way that no two levels are remotely the same, the way Wonder Flowers utterly transform levels in totally unexpected ways, the badges and how they open up more exploration opportunities, and what they'll eventually mean for the speedrunning community, not to mention the new online features, which are such a welcome addition to this formula. It is a truly remarkable game. To play it is to smile, to be spirited away to simpler times when this was the type of game that video games were. The wonder that we experienced when we played these games back on the NES or the SNES, Nintendo has managed to recapture it here in a 2D platformer that is so bursting with innovation and creativity that it feels at times impossible. Like, how could any one game be so full of so many different ideas, all of them executed flawlessly, all of them so fun, no matter how challenging they might be? Super Mario Bros. Wonder is likely one of the swan songs for the Switch, perhaps the last flagship first-party exclusive before the next Switch arrives, likely next year. And if that's the case, then this is one hell of a farewell party for the little handheld that could, because Super Mario Bros. Wonder is wonderful. Cyberpunk 2077 was a difficult moment in the history of the Shillup channel. I think that's probably where the nickname Shillup originated from, because I really liked Cyberpunk, both prior to release, which was a majority opinion, but also at and after release, which was a deeply unpopular opinion. I revisited the circumstances of that initial Cyberpunk review in my Phantom Liberty review, so I won't do so again here, but suffice it to say, I recognized and documented the deep technical content and design shortcomings that Cyberpunk suffered from at launch, but even despite those things, I really love Cyberpunk. The world was like nothing I'd ever experienced. The feeling of driving down those streets at nights and soaking up that city was so addictive. The characters within the main and side quests were all so beautifully written. The scenario and mission design was first class. It was a pretty average RPG, don't get me wrong, but as an action game, Cyberpunk 2077 absolutely delivered. I hadn't replayed the game since launch, but I knew that CD Projekt Red were working relentlessly to improve the game through dozens and dozens of patches, both big and small. We also knew that CD Projekt Red were working on an expansion, the only one we'd get for the game since the disastrous launch prompted CD Projekt Red to upend its long-tail support for the game. What we didn't know was that CD Projekt Red were also working on something called Update 2.0, an update that would radically remake a number of core game systems, including things like the cyberware, the perk trees, XP gain, stamina management, quick hacking, weapon design, transmog, vehicle combat, and so much more. This stuff was first revealed at the same time that the Phantom Liberty expansion was, and it kind of stole Idris Elba's thunder, because as excited as we all were for a new chapter in the Cyberpunk story, we were all much more excited to see a set of improvements that would make the entire game worth revisiting, or worth playing for the first time if we hadn't yet experienced it. CD Projekt Red nailed both the Phantom Liberty expansion and Update 2.0. Separately, they meaningfully expanded Cyberpunk, providing all new experiences in Night City that both deepened and broadened the game. But delivered together as they were, they created a moment where everyone could look at how hard CD Projekt Red had worked in those preceding 2 years and really celebrate that success. Cyberpunk will always be a cautionary tale of hype and overpromising, but it's now also a tale of hard work and redemption for a game that, despite its many shortcomings, always deserved to be saved. I attended a hands-on preview for Alan Wake 2 when I was in LA a few weeks prior to the game's launch. From the minute I got my hands on this, I was like, okay, Remedy have reached their final form. Alan Wake 2 is not just a sequel to Alan Wake 1, the cult classic from over a decade ago. Instead, it's a sequel to every Remedy game ever made. It's the hard-boiled noir setting and protagonist of Max Payne, it's the live-action sequences of Quantum Break, it's the ambitious presentation and paranormality of Control, but separate from those individual releases, it's also an iterative work that channels the through lines coursing through Remedy's expansive and utterly unique portfolio of work. Sam Lake's handsome face, powerful musical numbers, meta commentary, fourth wall breaking, an overt nod to Finnish culture, and a cast who are themselves a form of Easter egg. Alan Wake 2 is Remedy acknowledging and celebrating Remedy, but not in a self-congratulatory or indulgent way. It's confidence, not arrogance. Confidence in their unique voice as game makers. And what a game they made. Their first ever survival horror, a genre that unsurprisingly comes quite naturally to them. It was one part true detective and another part dark, twisted film noir fever dream. Saga's story was one of people, while Alan's was one of demons. Saga's mindspace allowed her to make breakthroughs in her case, carefully sifting through evidence and intuiting solutions, while Alan was literally writing himself out of a hell that he created, using locations and plot points to reform the story around him as needed. It was so clever and captivating right the way through, full of so many genuine surprises that trying to predict any outcome was a total fool's errand. I think special mention must go to Epic Games here. Their storefront is terrible, that is a fact, but this is a company that spent a lot of money to make a very weird and very risky IP, giving Remedy unbridled creative control at every single turn. The bulk of our gratitude should go to Remedy for making this thing, but I think we should also save a little for Epic, because without them, Alan Wake 2 simply does not exist. At the Game Awards this year, game director Sam Lake took to the stage to dance in a musical number pulled straight from the game. Sam Lake has always been known for his Max Payne scowl, but that night, that smile on that man's face, I will never forget it. Congrats to Sam Lake and his co-director Kyle Rowley. They both absolutely deserve that award for Best Game Direction, and Remedy deserves every accolade for putting out something as unique and weird and cool and awesome as Alan Wake 2. Since I've started using my I recommend / I do not recommend rating system, there have been 3 games that I have very strongly recommended on the channel. The first was Elden Ring. The third was Tears of the Kingdom. We'll talk about that one soon. But the second was Resident Evil 4 Remake. I do not remember the original Resident Evil 4 very well. I know that I played it, we had it on GameCube. Owing to a crippling WoW addiction at the time, Resident Evil 4 left little impression on me. Besides, I was always more of a Resident Evil 3 man since I really love the Nemesis, but when pressed, I'd probably freely admit that Resident Evil 2 was better for its originality and scale. Hell, I loved Code Veronica more than I love Resident Evil 4, and I'm desperately hoping that those Code Veronica remake rumors turn out to be true. I also really settled on the idea that the Saw-inspired body horror and first-person perspective of Resident Evil 7 was the future of the franchise, that it had outgrown the more schlocky, grindhouse horror and third-person perspective of the franchise's past. Resident Evil 4 Remake just fucking roundhouse kicked all those notions in the head, leaving me dazed but ultimately very happy to be the recipient of Leon S. Kennedy's boot. Resident Evil 4 Remake both was and is a revelation in the survival horror genre. Back then, it changed action games forever with its third-person over-the-shoulder perspective and its ambitious, unforgettable set pieces. In 2023, the remake would completely re-baseline our expectations about how it should feel to control a character in a game like this, and how deep the combat sandbox could be. Controlling Leon is incredible. His responsiveness, his locomotion, his ability to parry literally anything, including a chainsaw. Survival horror games have always really prided themselves on a clunky and disempowered control scheme that created more tension for how slow your character was to react to things, but here in Resident Evil 4 Remake, the control scheme perfectly reflected Leon's years of training as a government operative. This man was a finely tuned weapon, and be it at range or up close, the game gave you all the tools you needed to utterly dumpster your foes if you were skilled enough to do so. The tuning of the combat encounters was so precise that I lost count of how many times I downed the last foe with my very last bullet. The set pieces were even bigger and more audacious than ever before, helped in no small part by the miraculous RE engine making everything look incredible. But I guess most of all, Resident Evil 4 Remake really felt like the Metal Gear Solid sequel we are never gonna get. It's the island setting, the government operative sent in solo, the rescue op, the very Japanese take on American characters and American action, the way Leon controls and how much he's capable of. It's very reminiscent of Snake. Its unforgettable cast of supporting characters and mini-bosses will sear themselves into your memory. It's Metal Gear, except it's horror instead of stealth, and it's not really survival horror per se, it's action horror. And it was the best action game I played all year, and one of the best action games I've played full stop. It took me a long time to get here, but I am finally a Resident Evil 4 man, and I really hope Capcom are able to find the right balance between honoring the legacy established by games like Resident Evil 2 and 4, while also charting a bold future like we saw in Resident Evil 7 and Village. Alright, it's time for the top 2. So, for the very last time in 2023, Stu, do the music thing. How do you follow up what is almost objectively regarded as one of the greatest video games ever made? Well, if you're Aonuma-san, you just make a better one? I'm not exaggerating, by the way, and I think this is what struck me the most about the discourse surrounding Tears of the Kingdom. Many people said it felt like a DLC, and I'm like, how do you even respond to that? Yes, it did use the same map, and many of the same game systems were near identical, particularly cooking and combat, but the map had a completely different design philosophy, no longer leveraged entirely into the shrines, but instead peppered with all manner of puzzles, side quests, and secrets. You couldn't swing a Korok without hitting 5 or 6 things to do nearby, and that was a total inversion of Breath of the Wild, which was rightly criticized for being spacious and serene, but also quite vacant. That's setting aside the Sky Isles, which are themselves a massive puzzlescape full of things to discover. We knew that was coming because it was a central feature in the game's marketing, but what we didn't know is that Nintendo made an entire underground cavern nearly the same size as the overworld map. The depths were a stroke of genius, not only for the quantity of content they delivered, including some of the biggest, best, and most expansive puzzles I've ever played in an adventure game, but the depths are also an inversion of the exploration model that defined the rest of the game. Above ground, you were led by the horizon, seeing something in the distance and heading toward it. Here in the depths, you couldn't see shit. You were just fumbling in the dark, and you had absolutely no idea what you were going to find until you got close enough to reach out and touch it, or have it reach out and touch you. But the absolute masterstroke of Tears of the Kingdom was the Ultra Hand building system, a system so unbelievably flexible, sophisticated, and flawlessly implemented that it brought other game developers to tears. Social media was flooded with posts from veteran game makers, each of them totally dumbstruck by what Nintendo had built here. I don't know shit about game dev, but I know enough to know that for a system to be this flexible, this functional, and not even have objects clip ever so slightly into the geometry, that is just dangerous sorcery. It is rumored that Tears of the Kingdom was essentially done a full year before it was released, giving Nintendo time to playtest and polish it, and the results are utterly immaculate, the only blemish being the performance limitations imposed by Nintendo's aging hardware, but offset by the fact that it's an absolute fucking miracle that Nintendo got this game to run at all on a handheld that is now in 2023 roughly as powerful as the Gladys Potato was in 2011. Tears of the Kingdom is a goddamn masterpiece, and I do not envy the task of Nintendo as they consider where they might take this franchise next, but if Tears of the Kingdom has shown us anything, it's that Nintendo will figure it out. Alrighty. Well, here we are. Number 1. You know it was coming. And here it is. Let's start with the question on everyone's mind. Where the fuck is the Baldur's Gate 3 review shill up? It is a very good question, so I'll give you an honest answer. I really tried. I really tried to write it. I tried multiple times, multiple drafts. I reckon I've written more than 10,000 words at this point on Baldur's Gate 3, but I think all of those words are shit, and I'm not going to put out a review for one of the greatest games ever made when I think that review is shit. It's not the first time I've encountered this challenge. It's for the exact same reason that I've never been able to review Outer Wilds or Final Fantasy XIV. Sometimes you experience something that means so much to you that when you try to put it into words, all that comes out is nonsense, certainly not fit for publication. So I'm sorry that I was not able to find the right words for Baldur's Gate 3, but at the same time, I don't know that there's a lot that I could add to the discourse at this point. It's utterly self-evident to anyone who spent any time with the game that this is an all-timer. The voice cast is not only one of the largest of any game, to the point where almost every animal you meet has a voice actor, but it's also one of the strongest and most talented voice casts ever assembled. Personally, I struggle to think of a game that has a voice cast this large and where every single performer was delivering an 11 out of 10 performance. The writing, like imagine writing just one of these characters or side quests. Imagine how satisfying that would be as a creative to have created something that good. Now imagine writing multiple characters and multiple quest lines with the same deftness and skill, and then imagine trying to tie them all together under a main quest line, and then imagine building into each part of it this huge, seemingly infinite number of variables that reflect which party members are present in a given moment, the events that had transpired earlier, and the decisions that the player might make then and there. Just like, imagine the level of not only talent but organization and discipline required to make all of that work. Imagine a gameplay sandbox that was as rich with choice as the dialogue options were. Dense classes, multi-classes, spells, sophisticated itemization that enabled build customization, activatable items, the ability to yeet your party members across the map, complex boss encounters with ingenious mechanics, and so many of the rules that apply in combat also apply to the real world, giving you a huge amount of freedom to engage NPCs or explore the map in ways that would seem totally unexpected, except for the fact that Larian had already accounted for it when they built this game and made all of this possible. I do think I have a few unique things to say about Baldur's Gate 3, about the dice roll and how that allows us to confront probability, which is typically obscured from us in games, about the narrator and how she fixes a problem inherent in most games, that being a game's inability to communicate subtle information about settings, scenes, events, and character reactions, about the way that combat is only ever used in furtherance of a narrative goal rather than as just for combat's sake, about the challenges of a silent protagonist in a world so full of voice and personality, about save scumming, and a few other things. Maybe I will write that Baldur's Gate 3 review one day, but it won't be anytime soon, so for now, you'll have to settle for this. But make no mistake, I very strongly recommend Baldur's Gate 3. It has been a very, very big 2023. I need a nap, so I'm going to take one for the first 2 weeks of January or so, after which time we'll be back with the news show, the previews, the reviews, and the Friends Per Second podcast. I don't think 2024 is going to be quite as large as 2023, but in this business, you never know. I do know that I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do, so a big thank you for tuning in. The support you guys show just by clicking on videos means the world to me, and as much as I'm looking forward to some time off, I'm also really excited to get back to it because I love what I do. So thank you again, a very special thank you to the patrons of the channel, and also a big thanks to this video sponsor, NVIDIA and GIGABYTE AURUS. They're actually giving away a PC to one lucky Australian or New Zealander, so if you want to be in the running for that, then stick around. Thanks again, and have a great new year. I'll see you on the flip side. Here in Australia, Christmas is hot. We don't wear those ugly Christmas sweaters. We wear singlets, shorts, and double pluggers. We don't sit at the fireplace. We go to the beach. We don't drink eggnog, because I think that's illegal here, I'm not sure. Point is, we don't get the idyllic white Christmas that a lot of other places do, which is why this video sponsors NVIDIA and GIGABYTE AURUS are giving Australians and New Zealanders a shot at the white Christmas of your dreams. Meet this bad boy, a custom-built all-white PC from GIGABYTE's resident PC builder, Simple Mods. He's done a bunch of builds for the channel in the past, including the Cyberpunk themed PC, and more recently the Starfield themed mini ITX build. This time he's got into the festive spirit, delivering this absolutely stunning, gleaming white build that even Santa himself would be jealous of. At the heart of it is an NVIDIA RTX 4070, the beyond fast GPU that allows you to experience lifelike virtual worlds and ultra high FPS gaming. 40 series GPUs can make this happen because they're the best GPUs on the market, hands down. In terms of raw processing power, 40 series GPUs deliver more raw throughput than anything else you can get your hands on, allowing you to hit higher frame rates while turning up those graphical settings. But that's not all. NVIDIA 40 series GPUs also feature advanced technologies that push the hardware even further. We're talking stuff like DLSS 3, which uses AI to interlace additional frames, more than doubling your frame rate in games like the finals. There's also full ray tracing, the most advanced recreation of light ever seen in video games, best showcased in games like Cyberpunk 2077. NVIDIA Reflex is a technology that reduces input latency, so if you're playing competitive shooters, this is a technology that's going to give you an edge. It doesn't hurt that this GPU happens to be sitting in such a handsome build. As always, Simple Mods did a build video for how he put it all together, so if you'd like to check that out, I've left a link to it in the description below. Best of all, NVIDIA and GIGABYTE AEROS are giving this away to one lucky person in Australia or New Zealand. All you need to do is follow the giveaway link below. There's a few ways to enter, and each of them give you more chances of winning. The competition will run for about a month, and after that, one of you will get this PC in the mail, no strings attached. Not a bad way to finish off the year, huh? I want to thank NVIDIA and GIGABYTE AEROS for their generosity. This PC is worth a pretty penny, and they're just giving it away right here, exclusive to the channel, and I appreciate that a lot. I wish everyone the best of luck. May you welcome in 2024 with a new shiny PC. Thanks NVIDIA and GIGABYTE AEROS for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.